Hailing frequencies open, and welcome to Star Trek Discoverage, the live podcast that boldly goes into excruciating detail about this week's episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. I'm your host, Aaron Coker, a.k.a. Caliban, and oh my, it's good to see George Takei again. Joining me on the show as usual is my co-host. She's also the co-host of the Generations Geek podcast, a more or less family-friendly celebration of geekdom. It's Ella Pearson. Ella, welcome back to Discoverage.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. It's great to have you back. And let me introduce our guests so the three of us can begin chatting. Also returning to the show tonight, a musician and a podcaster, the co-host of the Virtual Theater podcast and the Pro Wrestling Required Viewing podcast, and my co-host on the Backtracking podcast. It's Gooey Fame. Gooey, welcome back to the show.
Hi. It's good to be back.
It's good to have you here. And I like your background. It's very nerdy in a special way.
Oh, yeah. You like my TV guide, Star Trek ships.
Oh, is that what that is?
That's
what?
It's up to the Enterprise NX-01.
Okay.
So it's from the early 2000s.
Early 2000s?
Founded at
early 21st century.
Mall or something, you know?
Nice. That's great. It puts us all in the mood to talk about the adventures of Captain Archer and crew. It's the spooky season, of course. It's Halloween, or Halloween's coming up, but it is October. And we are trying to reflect that on our podcast Backtracking, where we talk about some of the spookier inspirations behind your favorite episodes of Star Trek. And this is our third year, I think, right? And so we've done Halloween or spooky things a couple times, but I feel like I've gotten the general impression that it's tough to do spooky on Star Trek. Star Trek can't always be spooky.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can go there. You know, it can do a few different things, but I think there's a few sort of genres that you've kind of not thought it does its best in. I think comedy is another one you've said, but I don't know. I think Star Trek can tilt in those directions, but I think it hasn't always done the best job of, fully embracing like horror or comedy or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does.
Yeah. There isn't anything that I want to say that Star Trek can't do. Cause I think that, this grand experiment that we're involved in, tonight, watching these episodes, and these new shows proves that like Star Trek is capable of doing a lot of stuff, but it just seems like it's either because the optimistic future of Star Trek keeps you from exploring like the kind of crappy situations like, a murderer wants to kill me, he escaped from an asylum, or when you go to sleep, a demon taunts you in your dreams and is definitely going to kill you in a stinger at the end of the movie. And so I feel like Star Trek can't often end that way. And so that keeps it from having that kind of nihilistic thing that horror has sometimes. Also, there's no ghosts. Mm-hmm. It's a very scientific thing. So if somebody's a ghost, you're just like, no, it's not. It's a multiphasic life form. It's not a ghost. Not very scary. So it's a little different.
Yeah, part of Star Trek, you want to like solve the mystery by the end of the episode.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And a lot of times in horror,
I was going to say they could do a classic Scooby-Doo. Creepy at the beginning.
They pull the mask off. That's how Star Trek 6 ends, isn't it? It's like, oh my God, it was the guy from Benton the whole time. Yeah. And he would have got away with it if it wasn't for Scotty shooting him out of a window. Join us on Backtracking all this month, because we are talking about spooky things in the world of Star Trek where we find them. This is the part of the show where we talk about the news in the world of Star Trek, but really it's the part of the show where we talk about the Rings of Power. And Gooey, I don't know if you're a Rings of Power fan, if you're watching the Rings of Power, but things are happening. Rings are getting powered up on this show.
Yeah, I've been watching it. I might be up to date. I don't know.
Well, I don't want to ruin anything, and it would be tough to ruin anything. And listeners, if you haven't, maybe just go la 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 for a little bit, because we're going to talk about the up to date spoilers of Rings of Power. But the last episode I think it was a strong episode, but I felt like it was. Did you just see that? Like the entire episode was just people just sort of recovering from the big thing that happened in the episode right before. And something that I've really liked about this show, and some people don't like, is the ways that they invent new characters and kind of find new stories to tell that aren't necessarily canon stories. But this was the most This was the most Luke Skywalker meet Chewbacca episode that we've had, I think, of Rings of Power, where everything just slows down and people talk about like, oh, it's almost like this is gonna happen. And that thing at the end where they have like, it's not the Southlands anymore, it's the Mordor lands, and it sort of like crosses it out, and then it's like Mordor. And it's like, yeah,
I kind of laughed at that.
We get it. Yeah. We know.
That.
We all know that. So
it's like, no, man, we saw the mountain. You put it in there.
Anybody who's left behind now knows. Yeah. So
the idiot proved it.
I guess I was not paying attention. I didn't realize that it was only 8 episodes. So basically, like this is, or the one coming up tonight or at midnight is it, for the first season. So sort of ahead of time here. Ella, what would you think? What do you think about the first season? How do you think that they sort of pulled it off, or did they pull it off?
I guess for me, so and stop me if I've already said this on the podcast. I don't think I have because I was gone last week.
Yeah.
But I find myself doing with Rings of Power what I kind of make fun of other people for doing with Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I find myself being like, but that doesn't make sense because of this, and this in the canon.
Yeah.
Like, why are they changing this? What do you mean Celeborn is gone? What does that mean?
Yeah,
you
right.
know?
Yeah.
And then
My
I
poor
come on
husband.
here every week and I'm like, what does that matter if they bend the canon a little bit to help the story? And so then I was thinking about it last week and I was like, am I just being like, am I doing what, have I become what I've always hated?
You stared into the abyss too long.
Exactly. I'm going to the dark side, but so the past few episodes for me, I've been grappling with that. I can't tell. I need to watch it over again and be like, am I really having an issue with like the plot or the story, or am I just having like but that doesn't make sense because elves die when you meet,
Yeah.
But it's just the past couple episodes that I've been a little bit haven't quite hit right for me. So overall, I've been pretty happy.
It's weird that they want to have him at all or mention Celeborn at all because
why even be like,
we've been fine without him.
Was married.
Yeah.
We don't know when she got. Well, I guess I don't know if we know when she got married, but it's like I was assuming that she hadn't even met Celeborn.
Yeah, well, I mean, they met in the first age, right? But
oh yeah, I guess you're right about that.
But yeah, I mean, like if you're not
so
gonna,
I guess that adds up.
So maybe they're setting him up for something in the future. But yeah, it was kind of like I think they've got another big thing planned for next week because this felt, like I said, it was like good, and I liked this character moments, but it did feel a little like marking time. Hopefully, to give us something else that's even, bigger, which I don't know what that would be at this point, but.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy to see what happens tomorrow. It's also hard because there's, scrunching the timeline.
Yeah.
So I'm like, anything could happen. Like that week where the cold open was like the dream of the fall of Numenor. I was like, this is happening much faster than I thought. But it's like, that could happen any day.
This
I
is
don't
crunched.
know when it's going to happen. Could be any time.
Gooey, are you a big Tolkien fan before Rings of Power?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I like all the movies a lot.
Yeah.
And then and I read like some of the books when I was a kid, and then later on, after being into like all the movies and the stuff, read stuff like the Silmarillion and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I remember loving it, and like I took all these notes because it's like a history book, So
I was like,
and I read it all, and I was like, I understood it. And I was like, great, that was an amazing experience. And then like, it's been a while since I've read it, and now I don't remember any of it. So like all the stuff with like the lore, I'm like, I remember like, like a big spider and like a bad guy, and like they came from the West, but I don't know, when they introduce the character, I'm like, I don't remember if that's like canon or not,
Yeah.
So they're also not allowed, like, the legalities they can't touch the Silmarillion. So it's all like the appendices, which I've never read.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people who've read the Silmarillion haven't read the appendices, and so it's like, this could be anything.
Yeah, and it's always a question of like, what can they actually use and not? Because things keep showing up, and I'm like, wait a minute, can they really use that? But I guess
like fudge a few things, maybe.
Yeah, or like, who was that person
mentioned in the appendices? Yeah.
I had a really boring job probably about 10 years ago, and nothing really else to do. And so there was a website, it might still be around, but all fan wikis are like fandom wikis now, basically, the company fandom. But there's a website, an encyclopedia called the Encyclopedia of Arda. And it was a, very well fleshed out Tolkien, wiki, essentially. It didn't call itself that. And so basically I just like read that like all day long. And I'd only really read like the main trilogy and The Hobbit and The Silmarillion, but I'd never read The Unfinished Tales or any of those other ones. But I basically just like got addicted to just spinning my way through this thing. And so I learned a lot of that stuff. Like you, Gooey, there's a lot of it that I don't really remember anymore. But sometimes they'll say something and I'm like, oh, I know that's the forest where there's something. It's like, well, how do I know that? So yeah, I mean, we're all approaching it from different levels of sort of awareness, or learnedness, but I think the show has done a pretty good job of servicing all types of fans. If I had to make a ruling right now,
it works okay as for me, like as someone who just knows a little bit. I'm like, oh yeah, I can kind of see where this fits in. Like I'm like anticipating maybe certain things that happen that I like think I remember. So
yeah,
while like seeing the things that are. Like, I'm seeing the things that are meant to be hints to stuff that, like, fans might already know. So, yeah, it doesn't ever leave me, like, confused or, like, other than there's little moments, like the Mordor thing or whatever, where it's like, oh, yeah.
That was a bit much, yeah.
Oh, so this is Mordor. Yeah, okay, interesting. Well, let's go from the deep, deep world of Tolkien to the extremely deep and ever-growing world of Star Trek. There has been a ton of news in Star Trek recently. Specifically, we've had sneak peeks and trailers of new Star Trek shows or new seasons of Star Trek shows seen by fans at the recent New York Comic-Con. And I thought that we should give our thoughts on some of the news and some of the trailers and details that we've seen. Have you guys seen these trailers?
Yeah, I watched. You sent me pretty much all the stuff today, so I did my homework.
There's a lot to talk about, and I think that we should probably start with our look at season 5 of Discovery, which is back for a 5th season. I don't know. Sometimes they renew them like 2 at a time, so I can't remember if it's been renewed for a 6th, but I'm sure that that's on their minds. But this is season 5. The synopsis was, in Season 5, Captain Burnham and the crew of the USS Discovery uncover a mystery that sends them on an epic adventure across the galaxy to find an ancient power whose very existence, stop laughing, has been deliberately hidden for centuries. But there are others on the hunt as well, dangerous foes who are desperate to claim the prize for themselves and will stop at nothing to get it.
Do you want to double check the date on that statement?
Let's see. Nope, no, this is all good here. This is all... Yeah.
That's a description of this coming season.
There's some new characters. What? Oh, Book is there. Wait. Tilly's there.
There's a mystery?
The president's there?
A mystery? In a season of Discovery?
Yeah. So David Cronenberg introduces us to the idea of the greatest treasure in the known galaxy. So we don't, ironically, we don't know what that is. But there's some new characters. Yeah, it was inside of us all along. Character actor Kellen Keith Rennie is playing Captain Rayner. There's also a Bonnie and Clyde type pair called Maul and Locke, who look like a sort of rough and tumble sort of pair. All right, so you guys obviously want to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the same elephant that we've seen a couple years in a row now. I think it's interesting that Discovery is very successful. We obviously like it. A lot of people like it, but it does seem to kind of do the same thing. And nobody's ever accused, maybe they have, I don't know, like Cheers of just being a show that's set in the bar, the whole time. They went to Carla's apartment. They went other places. You know what I mean? Like, once you get a formula, it works. But like, I feel like obviously the three of us are conscious of this show's formula. And I think that the showrunners are conscious of the formula as well, because whenever they're asked about what they're doing and where they're going, they seem to have like a party line talking points of how if there's a tonal shift. In fact, they talked to showrunner Michelle Paradise, and she said, "We do have a bit of a tonal shift this season. We try to keep everything fresh and new. We talked about shifting the tone because there was a little bit of heaviness in season 3 and 4. So this is more of an action-adventure sort of season. There's a mystery, there's a quest, and a mysterious power." And so started off telling us that it was totally different, ended up kind of explaining what we've come to expect a season of Discovery to be. And my question is like, why not just ease into it? Like, what's the problem? People like the show. Why try to tell us that it's like something different?
Do people like the show?
Every single week, this person up here who's sitting in her bed says it's the best episode ever that she's ever seen.
I do. I like it. I'm talking about the people.
Oh, do people like it?
Yeah.
Don't they? People like Discovery.
I feel like they catch a lot of flack. I feel like they catch a lot of a lot of what I'm trying not to do to Rings of Power. Like a lot of like.
Oh, I see. So
yeah.
you think like legitimate criticism, or are we talking about just like bad people? You're bad.
I mean, there's always what I learned as a film major is that there's always legitimate criticism, right? Because nothing is perfect except for Tootsie or whatever you want to say. But
Tootsie, they hold Tootsie up the screenplay for writing, and it's like half of that movie was improvised. So I don't know why.
To be like Tootsie is perfect.
Yeah, but
did anyone ever bother to show me Tootsie in film class?
Show me Bill Murray's lines.
Tootsie is the perfect movie.
Bill Murray improvised all those lines. So come on. Yeah, I don't. How is that a great screenplay? Anyway, the structure's good. The structure's good. Yeah.
In your movie. What the hell was I talking about?
You were talking about legitimate criticism. There's always good criticism.
Exactly. There's always legitimate criticism to be made about anything.
Mm.
So not all of the criticism about Discovery or anything else is always all illegitimate. For me, what I see people talking about Discovery, and for most of the new Star Treks, I find to be illegitimate or like just kind of weak people. It's like Some Like It Hot is better than Toots. I believe that.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have I ever seen Tootsie? No. Anyways.
Oh, really?
No.
How did you graduate?
That's my question.
How'd you get away with that?
Well, COVID hit, so it was all,
you're all out of here.
It was a wash. I think it's people being like, they don't want it. You know what I mean? They don't like it. And that's fine. And if you don't like something, that's okay. But then I think people feel the need to make up a reason why they don't like it. Therefore, it's bad. So here's why it's bad.
Yeah.
Which isn't the same thing, you know.
Yeah. It's frustrating as somebody who is a critic. Trying to convince people of the. I don't want to say necessity because are critics necessary? I don't know, but the legitimacy of what I do is difficult when people make bad faith criticisms of something, because I want to complain about what's really wrong with these shows. And I'm undercut by these other people. No, I just don't think that as a critic who has not always loved Discovery, I think that this is their lane. They're in their lane, so I don't know why they can't. Wouldn't you want the messaging to be, we're really happy with what we've accomplished and we're going to continue doing it. I don't have access to their streaming numbers. I don't know if they feel like they are, winning, but I think the show is winning. The numbers are always high. People, feel generally positive about it. So I don't know why they feel like they have to lie to us basically and tell us it's something different. It's not, it's fine. If you pitched a Star Trek show where it's a crew, they are, made up of they're kind of misfits, but they become a family, and Nicolas Cage is their captain, and they're going to go on treasure hunts across the galaxy, that would totally hit. People would love that. And that's kind of what this show has become. Like, it's this, like, get her done, crew who's got a lot of heart and spirit, and they're solving these mysteries. That's totally valid. But I feel like they don't like that. Like, they don't want to be that. And they're the ones that make it that. So I don't know what the problem is.
Yeah, chip on their shoulder, maybe,
It's hard to be successful. It's hard.
It's hard.
When I saw it, I was thinking, like, because I don't like the show really. I've just come to realize, but I don't really like to complain about it too much. But And it's easy. It's slightly easier now because there are more shows out that are Trek shows that I do kind of like. So when I saw the trailer, I was like, okay, well, here's that show that's not really for me. And it was like, fine, as opposed to years before when it was like, that was really the only Star Trek on offer. I was like, not really that excited,
Yeah. I probably should save this until later, but we're already talking about it. And we're not going to talk about this the whole show. Obviously, we're going to move on a little bit. But at a panel for Prodigy, Kate Mulgrew was there, and Alex Kurtzman was there. And first of all, they did this with Strange New Worlds, and we got a Strange New Worlds show. So I wish that they would just like either do it or get off the pot as far as like having a Kate Mulgrew thing, because all of us have all seen with our own eyes Kate Mulgrew like cagily try to will an appearance by live action Janeway in a new show to happen, and I think people want it to happen, and I think Alex Kurtzman recognizes that, but obviously the deal isn't cut yet. They're running it through the computer to tell us if we'll watch a show with an old lady as the lead or whatever like that. So whenever they figure that out and get off their asses, we'll have this show. But there's no word on that yet. But somebody asked Kurtzman if what their goal was if in creating these shows and like the idea of having a new show on every week. And he said about the pitches that they get, he said, quote, "I think the goal is less to be in the volume business and more to be in the quality business." And I won't comment on everything he says, but he said that before. And there's a lot of shows and more on the way. He said, "So I think the answer is that we'll put on as much Star Trek as we feel is maintaining the franchise in a way where it doesn't feel like there's a whole corporate hand that's moving it into position for an outcome goal." It does kind of feel like a corporate hand is just moving it. He says, part of what I love is, in a funny way, we're still kind of a mom and pop shop. I don't know if I agree with that. They're letting us do it in a way that I think is true to the spirit of Star Trek. And I get nervous when people say that franchises have a lot of corporate hands on them, saying like 15 people are going to decide what these shows are going to be. Have you counted the amount of producers in the opening credits of Discovery? There's a lot of them. So anyway, he goes on for a while. But my thing is like, I feel like they have a messaging that is either self-conscious about what they're doing, like they're not doing now what they wanted. You're Alex Kurtzman, you come in, you go, I want to make a good Star Trek show that's true to the thing. And 5 years later, you look back and you go, we got a lot of things on here, and I have a lot of people telling me what to do, and these are the things that I want it to be? Or are these responses to indirect responses to criticisms that they get, which is, why are there 20 producers on Discovery? Why is there a new show every second of every day? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know why. Somebody asked him this question, and these are the things that he says, and it's clearly like, that's not how I feel about it. And I think that that some of these things aren't true.
I think it's like, well, yeah, I think he's just saying it so then enough people who don't really think about it that much go, oh, that's how it is. And then, it's...
Do you think that there are people like
propaganda?
That? Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are plenty of people who are just like, oh, yeah, sure. Tell me what I want to hear and make me feel like this isn't
please lie to me
corporate slop or whatever,
I love Tootsie more. Tootsie on Paramount, let's do this. So anyway, that's just we just got that out of the way, so now we can talk about the fun stuff. They showed us a new trailer for the second half of the first season of Prodigy. And I got to say, it looks pretty fun. Here's a little tidbit that you didn't know. Ronnie Cox will be reprising his role as Admiral Jellicoe in the show coming up.
Hell yeah.
All right.
Do little kids like Ronnie Cox? This is what I need to know.
Well, they're testing him out because they might do.
He's a singer-songwriter, so maybe
that's the question that they're out.
They like his music. Forget Total Recall. They like his music. Yeah. So anyway, he's back. We've already talked about the outrageous Okana. It's so weird. Like, I don't dislike it. I like when they bring people back, but just like, why these people? I just think it's kind of weird. At this point, I totally thought that we would have like Jojo Siwa. How did I do? We'd have some kind of guest star that would.
Is a person.
Okay, they'd have some kind of guest star that like would attract the kind of audience that they're looking for, which is a Nickelodeon audience. But kids go wild for the great taste of Ronnie Cox. Here's the synopsis while you recover from that. Did I write it down? Oh, I don't think there is a synopsis. They're just continuing on. We see in the trailer that it's Stardate 6612095. So we're finally we broke out the new Stardates. They're all in Starfleet uniforms, or like these sort of cadet uniforms for a lot of it. And the story that the trailer tells, and it's only like a minute long, is like, they're going to join Starfleet. And then it kind of seems like they were not going to join Starfleet. And also, it seems like they're setting up the opposition between having the real Janeway and the also real Janeway. Come on, hologram Janeway, have a little faith in yourself. Any other thoughts that you guys had about what we see in the trailer?
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. I like the first season, and it's weird to say, but I was like watching it. I'm like, it is weird. When I watched it, I was like, okay, I guess this is the show I'm into is the Nickelodeon show. And so my thoughts were both like being excited, but I was also like, I kind of wish there was like a live action Trek that I was like super into, you know? Because right now I think my two favorite things are the two cartoon shows, which is fine.
Ella?
I'm excited. I just feel like I didn't really, last season I wasn't enjoying it as much at first. And then by the end, they really got me. Like when it ended, I was like, wait, what am I going to watch next week? So I hope that they just kind of carry that through, you know?
Yeah. I think that it's becoming clear that, the final destination here is the Alpha Quadrant and Starfleet. And I think, that's fine. I just, I like the idea that they were separate, and that I just want, like, we had it tonight. We've had it on Lower Decks a lot recently. The new thing is everybody just screams out like we are Starfleet all the time. And I think, I don't know what that's, I have a couple ideas what that's code for, but like, I think that part of Starfleet is like recognizing that, like, other cultures and other people kind of have their own ways of doing things, and that's cool, and it can work. And so squeezing these guys into Starfleet, I don't know if that's the best destiny to militarize like these kids. I think that I'd like them to find a resolution to all their own personal stories, which seems to be happening. We've got somebody who seems to know about Dahl's roots, which I'm interested in finding out. And then we've got Gwen and her memories. My name is Gwen, and I remember everything. She's going to remember, I guess, what happened to her when she was young. And so looking forward to that. And we'll be talking about that soon in the future. October 27th is when that returns. No date, I should have said, for Discovery yet. We don't know when that's coming back. And of course, we got a big trailer for Picard. There's been a couple of trailers for Picard recently. Here's the official synopsis of Picard. Picard features Patrick Stewart reprising his iconic role, which he played for 7 seasons. This isn't much of a synopsis, by the way. It's the next chapter of his life. LeVar Burton, Michael Dorn, Jonathan Frakes, Gates McFadden, Marina Sirtis, Brent Spiner, Jerry Ryan, and Michelle Hurd star alongside Patrick Stewart in the 3rd and final season of the series. And as far as the story, we still don't know. We know that Picard is eating in a restaurant. He's at PJO Pootertoots, and somebody approaches him, and he's got a distress call from Crusher, who's on some kind of mission. We have seen a villain now. We know that Amanda Plummer will be the villain. Again, Amanda Plummer, big fan of Amanda Plummer, but like, kids going crazy for the great taste of Amanda Plummer. Why do we go out and get Amanda Plummer? I think it's kind of weird.
This is for the old heads. This show, so
I guess, yeah.
It's for the boomers.
Yeah, we all have good memories of Amanda Plummer. Other interesting things about the show that we see. LeVar Burton's real life daughter, Mika Burton, will be playing a character, one of his daughters in the show. I thought that was interesting. Also, Worf is a pacifist now. Gooey is a Worf expert. Can any good come of this? Or were we always heading here?
I'm curious to see, it could go either way. The concept isn't necessarily inherently good or bad, I don't think, but
yeah,
I don't know.
To me, it feels like a joke, like, oh, the new thing is that he doesn't fight. And then, of course, by the end, he'll fight.
That's true, especially because it was underscored by a very, like, when Riker's like, we're all gonna die. I was like, oh my God. Like,
yeah, right.
It does feel like a punchline. Kind of like, it reminded me of the line in, like, Nemesis, where Worf's like, at least the Romulans fought with honor. And it's just this dumb line, but it, like, kind of screws with his character. And they do that with all the characters. But the whole trailer made me think of, like, Nemesis. Because we got, this is more 2009, but we got the big, creepy Romulan ship, and we got a scary Romulan villain going, I want revenge! Yeah. I was like, okay,
So every Star Trek movie ever? Okay, right, yeah.
Yeah. Particularly Nemesis, I feel like I got vibes of. I don't know why.
Remember, where are we at on time? We gotta stop talking about this stuff. Remember when the TNG films started coming out, or maybe the TOS films too, and you heard about another one, and you went to see it, and you're like, oh, this one's good. And then, yeah, maybe it was. And as it went on, they kind of weren't. But you're like, it's just another one. Here's another one. Mm-hmm. The TV shows are the movies now, right? Like, that's just kind of like what we've got. And so now they're going to do another one. And you really hope that they can, like, land it and they can give, if not final resolutions, like good kind of resolutions to some of these characters and their arcs. And it's like, it seems like they're just kind of trying to do Nemesis 3? Did they already addressed Nemesis in the show?
Also,
so this is like Nemesis again.
Was 3 times as long, Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
So
I don't know if this needs to be a whole season. Like, this seems like a reunion special,
We've at some point, either on this show or on Backtracking, we've talked about, like, I don't know why they don't do TV movies, except that that's not hot right now. There's no prestige in that. But it would be easy to do a 90-minute movie to give it the mid-level budget that we talk about in wanting in a Star Trek film, and just, like, giving these old-timers a break, just, like, do a 90-minute movie and wrap up what you need to wrap up. Anyway, speaking of wrapping things up, it seems like everything is going to happen in this. Lore is in it, apparently. Brent Spiner didn't want to play Data anymore, but he'll play every single other character that has any connection to Data, which is fine. And the guy from The Nanny is in this one. Moriarty's back, everybody. Who had Moriarty on their bingo card? Nobody, probably, I don't think. So it'll be interesting to see how or why Moriarty is in this, and what capacity.
Yeah, I feel like I should just embrace it, because I saw that and I was like, and lore, I was like, I'm sorry, but I was like, this is dumb. But I'm
Gooey's
like,
giving in.
maybe it's so outrageous that I'll just have a good time with it.
It just might work. We'll have to see. The fact that Moriarty is in it and, like, Elnor is not in it is a little, like, frustrating to me, or even Rios or any of the other characters that we had established. But let's see what's up with the old TNG crew. And I have to admit, I do want to see that. Mm-hmm. There's nothing else that I really want to talk about, although I did send Gooey a thing about the new Worf comic on the heels of the Star Trek comic that we talked about last week. Elle, I don't know if you know, there's a Star Trek comic starring Sisko, which will be the ongoing adventures of Sisko and a ragtag crew, including Data, by the way. There is a kind of spin-off comic to that called Defiant, where Worf goes on a journey with some other characters. It's called The Dirty Dozen Meets Star Trek. And I think that actually sounds pretty cool. Don't know why that's not a show. But I would like to see that be a show. So maybe they'll adapt some of this stuff. I also wanted to point out, and this is just for me, and then we'll do this and we'll just move on. But the second episode of the Lower Decks comic 3-issue miniseries features Dracula.
That's
Dracula
awesome.
Comes on board the Cerritos.
It's about time.
Yeah, it's about time. And so I like to point out that I don't know what the obsession is with pairing Lower Decks with, like, more fantasy elements than sci-fi elements. I feel like that happens a lot, but they're literally fighting Dracula now, which technically is gothic horror. So there's your horror. They've got it in Star Trek. Mission accomplished. Let's do our mission finally. We've seen the 8th episode of the 3rd season of Lower Decks. It's an episode called Crisis Point 2, Paradoxus. and we're here to talk all about it. But first, as always, a warning. We are setting a course for the spoiler zone listeners, so be warned. We're glad you've decided to join us, but if you haven't seen the episode, spoilers are incoming. The official synopsis for Crisis Point 2, Paradoxus is Mariner and Boimler work these... Nope, that's not what it is. It's the sequel to Crisis Point 1. That's all you need to know. It was written by Ben Rogers. It was directed by Michael Mullen. There was no start date for this episode. And, of course, the only special fact you need to know is that George Takei reprises his role of Sulu in this episode, even though he is a dream Sulu or an imaginary Sulu. It's been 26 years since his last appearance as Sulu in the third season Voyager episode Flashback, although he has appeared in fan productions and he's voiced the character in video games and on Robot Chicken since then. But still been a little bit of time since we've seen Sulu before. Throw it open to the panel here. What'd you guys think about Crisis Point 2 Paradoxus?
I thought it was fun. I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, overall, I enjoyed the episode.
Me
Ella?
too. I thought it was fun, and I'm excited that they're doing more with like the Section 31 or like already like shadowy figures. You know what I mean?
Yes. Which is the cliffhanger thing that we got at the end. The one thing. So this is like. Here's my thing. I didn't like the episode for most of the episode, and the ending of the episode, like, retroactively made it all work for me. But it's that sort of icebox moment where you go, wait a minute, why did this happen? Why did that happen? And the idea of Boimler, who is old Boimler now, we know this, experiencing this personal tragedy. Very a la, so you can have like a rock monster, and it's obviously like from Star Trek V, but having like a plot or a character point that is kind of stolen but used well from a movie, which is Boimler having a holodeck adventure and finding out that like a family member has died, from like generations. Like, that's a good idea. But I guess I didn't realize, because they were zipping around and doing all this stuff, and the Tendi B plot was almost an A plot. I guess I didn't get that we were following, that Boimler was like really cracking up throughout the entire thing. Like, he was just kind of going off the beaten path in a video game, which I do all the time. And I wish that they had focused a little more on his emotional journey, so that when he gets to the point where he's just screaming at the Val, Godhead thing, like, why would you tell me what the answer to life is, you son of a bitch? And then going to like the George Takei telling him like, yeah, just chill, it's fine. Like, that really worked. But like all the stuff that I sat through before that, I was like, I hate these holodeck ones because like nothing really matters and it's not real. And what if this had just what happens in their holodeck is no different than what happens to them in real life. Do you know what I mean? Like, if this had just been like a real episode where they had to stop Romulans from getting the chronogamy thing to go back in time or whatever, I could totally just see that being a Star Trek episode, and putting that layer of removal in where it's in the holodeck is fun because it references the first episode they did, but you lose the sort of, I guess there's like emotional like danger, but there's no like physical danger. Do you guys feel that way about holodeck episodes? It seems like whenever they do a holodeck episode, the safeties always break or something goes wrong to the point where, there's a little more like threat.
Well, I saw what they're going for with him, like trying to like rewrite the story or like find meaning in the story because of what he was going through.
Yeah.
And
are you a Westworld fan?
I've not seen it. No,
it really started to remind me of Westworld in that, because there's a character in Westworld who plays the game of Westworld, and he's played it so much that he's become convinced that there is some deeper meaning to it, and so he's trying to get to the center of what he calls the maze, and it's like it felt like Star Trek doing Westworld. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, I think like I think it makes sense to have it in the holodeck, because it's like, I like the bit about him. He's clearly like breaking because he's following, like he is finding meaning out of something that's just like randomly generated by like an AI,
Yeah.
that doesn't, so I thought that made sense to have it be on the holodeck, and you just get the kind of the opportunity to like make fun of, tropes in the movies and stuff like that. I think, that's kind of fun, but I guess I didn't expect that his storyline was also like them kind of comment, like they had it, the emotional moment also had like a commentary on like the Star Trek movies. And, I guess it was like, it took away a little bit
about how they always try to have some kind of like lesson or something, like God's right here, human heart.
Well, also kind of the message that they got on was kind of what you were saying earlier, where they're like, oh, it's another one, it's another one, it's another one,
yeah.
And they sort of say in it like, it doesn't matter if they're all bad because they're Star Trek movies, and that's why we're Starfleet and we like all Star Trek, and that was where I was like, all right, a bridge too far. It's
round
like
them up.
Saying,
you brought it up. We're going to talk about it.
I'm sorry.
Is this a commentary on fan culture, or does the show not even know that it's doing it? Do they even know how they sound? Because you've got, as Gooey points out, you've got a character who is like, yeah, I did this one, this is Crisis Point 1. It's like, well, Crisis Point 1, was way better. Crisis Point 2 sucks, and this isn't my Crisis Point. They have to know what they're doing, right? Or is that...
I think so.
Insofar as their commentary on fan culture and fans' reaction to I don't know, every new iteration of Star Trek, but definitely like the current iteration of Star Trek.
I think they do, because I was just on a trip and I was listening to the podcast that had all Tawny Newsome and the creator of the show, and it was the guy who does Boimler. I'm sorry, I forgot his name. But Jack Quaid, yeah, and they were actually talking about like the concept of like gatekeeping and stuff like that. It did come up, and I think they mentioned it. They mentioned the creator of the show, like, and them talking about that. So I think it's something in their mind, and I think, I think they're more. I think they think they're making like a moral commentary on like gatekeeping, but it comes off as you have to like everything we make. I don't think they're the ones who should be talking about it. I don't know.
Yeah, they're not in a. I agree. They're not in a position where. I mean, what are they going to say? Like, don't watch our shows, right? Like, you're right about that. I just think that, like, I think it's okay for them to poke fun, and I think they've done it in the past, but it's okay for them to poke fun at people who are incessantly negative, or people who are criticizing in bad faith. Just for me, like, it was toothless because the resolution was, like you said, it was, you know what? Crisis Point 1, Crisis Point 2, it's all great because it's a Starfleet movie or whatever Starfleet stands in for Star Trek in this case. And so I was like, yeah, when a franchise tells me to just love everything it does, no matter what, I mean, obviously I can't ask them to not say that, but then again, why does everybody hate Enterprise? Come on, I'll put my hat on. Now, don't make me do it. If it's all good, if it's all good, then we have to love all of it, don't we?
Yes.
So start loving it.
I'm so with you.
Something that really got me about so I agree with you about that. The holodeck side, but maybe just Tendy's thing could have been like a real adventure. Because like when they're in the holodeck, they're like whenever they it's a dangerous line to walk when they comment on like the stupidity or like the just the implausibility of like the holodeck storyline when it's very similar to the things that they do every day. And it made me ask questions like, how do they fake technobabble? Do you know what I mean? Like, technobabble is already called babble. Like, it's so fake. So when somebody's like, yeah, we'll just put the laser ratchet in the interocitor and we'll do this thing. And she's like, oh, yeah, really? And it's like, that doesn't sound any different than anything that you guys say every day. Aren't you guys cosplaying your jobs right now? Isn't that what's going on? Didn't you get off your work and then come down and put on a uniform and then pretend to work more? Who's the weirdo here?
That gets at what the few of the Star Trek shows are, but this one in particular is that like the people in the show are fans of Star Trek.
Oh yeah. Like when she complains about how the Crisis Point 2 is just fan fiction, I'm like, you're living it. This whole show is fan fiction. What are you talking about? Yeah. I'm here for your research, not for your heart. That's something I liked when when Boimler went to the regular one type station, with the hot doctor, and he's like, "No, I'm not interested."
My
Here for your
I was
research.
watching this and with my girlfriend, my roommate, and the biggest the biggest I guess pop of the night was the horsey is going to bite you now.
The horsey's going to bite you now. Yeah.
I love that.
That was fun. I was talking about like dream sequences before and how there aren't a lot of dream sequences in Star Trek, but we got one. Another one. So that's good. Another one. I thought that the Kitty Hawk thing was both like completely obvious from the second that it began. And I don't, but it's like, why couldn't
I didn't get it.
Oh no. Okay. All right.
But
it worked.
Until he revealed it.
Then it really worked.
I loved it though.
But I just thought like, I felt like it was kind of underwhelming, but as a commentary, it becomes criticism proof when you're commenting on something that's lame, like V'ger is Voyager, or like Zardoz is, I'm not going to ruin Zardoz for you. Go watch Zardoz. But I was like, yeah, I mean, that's okay. But if it's kind of lame, then you can just say it's commenting on something that's lame. Anyway, I'm being relentlessly negative. The skin map though was, that was something special. That's also a Westworld thing, by the way. They have like,
What?
They have the maze like inside of their skin or whatever. So anyway, somebody watch Westworld.
I was gonna say a lot's happened on Westworld since I stopped watching.
Skin maps are there. I just thought the Kitty Hawk thing was so stupid that it was funny. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It was like ridiculous that he like crawled in there. He's like, "What?" in the whole plane, and I thought it was funny. That got me.
We don't do this because the ship is not usually, the ship has a voice, but it's not like a character. But this would be the point where like the ship itself just comes out and goes, "What do you want from me? You've been doing this for 13 hours. I've been making this up off the top of my head." It made me feel like when you dungeon master like a role playing game and the characters don't do what you want, and you're like, you just start tap dancing and you're just sweating and trying to come up with new things. The computer comes out and says like, please just log off, touch grass already.
That's when we need Badgie to come in or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. What else? A lot of good references, a ton of references to, and some sly references to other Star Trek movies. I thought, I like the fact that you kind of forget after a while that like that they're, in like a holodeck program and like the other characters are, not, they're just recreations, but there's a couple moments where you kind of catch them zoning out. So when like, Tendi is like yelling at Rutherford about like not taking it seriously, and they're having a conversation. Like in the background, like Ransom and Freeman are all just kind of standing there like that. And then when they get back into it, they're like, oh, and they kind of come back on. That's probably the kind of uncanny valley thing you'd have to get used to playing a game on the holodeck.
Yeah, they don't do that I feel like in other series either. Like that's specifically how they portray it here, because I feel like you see other stuff where they'll be talking about, like, they'll break the fourth wall or whatever, and the holodeck characters, like, the actors playing them do a good job of, like, seeming like they're reacting, but also, like, they're not shocked by hearing them talk about, like, spaceships or whatever.
Yeah. They're
just like...
Yeah. When you get a personal call, you're like, oh, hold on, you're taking it, and they're just like, until the call's over.
Yeah.
So we got a live chat with some of our viewers going on, and viewer Fandom Casual says that they want to see Boimler in a fantasy romance holo novel.
That's
maybe,
the dream.
Yeah, maybe shades of what Janeway has going on in the early seasons of Voyager. I can't remember if there's a name or if it's just supposed to be like the turn of the screw, but she plays a governess to two young kids. Again, is this like a power kink or something? Like you're the captain of like a ship and you want to go be a servant in the holodeck, but that's what people want. But would you guys want to see Boimler with CGI generated abs, of course, like, be in a fantasy romance novel?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'd be funny.
Yeah, I like the holodeck episodes, and obviously Boimler's so funny and Jack Quaid is so good. That'd be hysterical.
He's got an interesting relationship with women with the fairer sex.
Interesting.
Because sometimes it seems like he's he's all in, and other times he's very career minded and career focused. And we see that break a little bit in this, making me think that it's maybe more of a choice. You know, when we saw him on the raisin farm, and he was having to deal with all these like thirsty raisin pickers. Thirsty Raisin Pickers is my band name in college. And he's like totally like oblivious. It's like, is he really oblivious or is he like holding back? And now it seems like, oh, no, he was aware. He had a job to do, and that was picking some raisins. You gotta pick raisins.
And that was not having here we go, consensual workplace relationship.
That's right. Yes.
At the raisin farm.
Yes. Losing control and having a consensual workplace relationship. Mm-hmm. Not good. Any other thoughts about the episode? Lot going on. Obviously, they make a joke about a cliffhanger, leave us with a cliffhanger that seems to set up possibly something in the future. There's a question. Do you guys think that they will return to William in Section 31 sooner rather than later?
I do. I think they're going to do it. Yeah.
It would be nice if we got it in like the finale of this season.
I think at some point in time, that would have been just a really funny, like, one-off joke to, like, show that cliffhanger and then, like, never return to it. But I think Star Trek now, it's like, you know, and all cliffhangers will be answered. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if we're getting Moriarty back, like, we're definitely going to go to this current character on this current show. But I think in a perfect world, that would have been a really hilarious, like, joke that we never go back to.
Yeah. It's interesting that you point out like Moriarty and Picard, and it feels like, you know, in non-Star Trek shows, I think a lot of times, you know, the thing about Star Trek or about TV, excuse me, is you've got a main cast and they're who we focus on and that's what we do. But like in prestige TV and in like recent TV, you kind of start small, but it tends to like expand out, and sometimes side characters become main characters. And you know, I'm thinking about something like a Mad Men, or even like Shameless, which is on forever, and you have characters age out and leave, and new characters come on and become the focus. And Star Trek seems to, like, even though they've had these expansive stories, tends to still kind of be that. And on a show like Lower Decks, where you can draw whatever you want, you're not really limited. I wonder if they would ever consider like really expanding things, you know, having a character transfer somewhere else and be there for a while, or strongly establish some outside characters who we do then go check on or interact with the Cerritos crew a lot. You know, we've seen like probably one of the biggest recurring guest stars is like Mariner's Admiral Freeman, Mariner's father. I don't know if he's doing anything interesting, but like, you know, having a character like William, it would be interesting to follow him into his life in Section 31 or whatever he's doing. You know, Wedge Douge is a show where we do go literally to two other ships, and people really like that. So I was just thinking, like, maybe they could try to expand more the universe of Lower Decks rather than just keeping it to the four mains on the Cerritos.
Yeah, we haven't gotten our Spock episode yet.
Mm-hmm.
Spock episode, is that coming?
Oh yeah.
I was thinking that too. I thought that was what they were gonna do with Boimler back when he went to the Titan.
I thought we were finally gonna have it this week. I was like, today is the day.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be sort of like, you know, like, hey, this is kind of like a backdoor way that we can have like a show with Riker in it, kind of how like Janeway is in Prodigy, because I think they like attaching some of these legacy characters in it. So I was kind of surprised, but then thought it was a funny bit the way they undid it. And then with the episode last week with Peanut Hamper, I was like, okay, so like I was actually kind of blown away that it was like a whole episode about a character not on the ship, much like the other one you mentioned. So I was thinking like this is the show to explore and like do different stuff, you know?
Yeah, I guess that did happen last week. I blocked out Peanut Hamper. I forgot all about last week. All right, so they've done that a little bit. Yeah,
nothing like ongoing storyline, you know?
Yeah,
like Riker, what's up Riker up to or something, you know?
I'd like to see that continue, and I don't think there's any reason that they couldn't, this is around the time that Prodigy is taking place. So I don't know. Who knows if Prodigy ever returns to the Alpha Quadrant? Maybe we have a.
Oh,
would that be like Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers, the movie where you got the CGI characters and the cartoon characters interacting? Get Ugly Sonic and you're all set.
that'd be sweet. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that we covered just about everything we could think of on this episode about this episode. Let's talk about what's coming up next week, and we'll do that right after I tell you that if you like what you hear on this show, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at EISTPOD for updates and to get notified when new episodes of both Enterprising Individuals, the main show, and this show, Discoverage, are released. You can tweet to us on the show by using the hashtag Discoverage and email us at EISTPOD. Also, while you're on the internet, why not head to your listening platform of choice, subscribe to our show, give us a rate and a review if you think of it, because it really does help us out. Discoverage will return on October 20th next week for the 9th episode of the 3rd season of Lower Decks. We don't know the title of the episode yet, but we'll be here next Thursday to cover it. We'll be going live once again at 8 p.m. Central, so you can join us then. Follow us on Twitter or Facebook at EISTPOD to get notified when we're live and broadcasting. And in the meantime, check out our main show, Enterprising Individuals, at enterprisingindividuals.com. Every Wednesday on the show, I and a special guest discuss in excruciating detail a selected movie from the Star Trek series of movies, and we have news from the Trek sphere and interviews with special guests. Our most recent episode still available, and on it I'm joined by writer and podcaster Chris Sims to talk about Star Trek Nemesis, whose stock is going up recently, I guess. Is it the movie as bad as everybody says? Chris doesn't think so, and we talk all about why that's true. I say, bring Tom Hardy back. Apparently, he has time to go win judo competitions, so he can definitely phone in a voice role for one of these animated shows. Let's get Tom Hardy back in there. That's what I say. You can find Enterprising Individuals wherever you get your podcasts or at enterprisingindividuals.com. And I also want to take a moment to shout out my other Star Trek podcast that Gooey is the co-host on. It's called Backtrekking, and it's a show where we look at the real-world inspirations behind your favorite Star Trek episodes and films. And the latest episode is still available. On it, we're talking about the spooky 1983 John Carpenter film, Christine, and the Star Trek Voyager episode that it inspired, Alice. That's right. Tom Paris is a greaser from the 50s, the 2350s.
And we got more, like you said, more spooky stuff to come. So
absolutely,
this whole month is going to be, we're following in line with the Halloween vibe.
I think after 3 years, we have probably wrung all the spookiness out of Star Trek, but we will find something to talk about next year again for sure. You can hear that at Backtrekking on Twitter or wherever you get your podcasts. Ella, thanks as always for joining me to talk about Star Trek in the Star Trek universe. And where can people find you online?
Thank you. My personal socials are always at Gondor Gold, wherever, and I work for Star Trek Unlimited, so everyone should follow us there too.
Absolutely. And Gooey, pleasure to have you on the show as always. Where can people find you online?
I'm over on Twitter. I'm at GooeyFame.
And I don't have any depth perception, so I accidentally hit the end show button too soon. But we are still here. And I want to say that you can find me at KA1IBAN on Twitter, and you can find all of the shows on the Just Enough Trope Network at Just Enough Trope on Twitter. And that's it for us for this week. Thanks for listening. We are signing off. This is Aaron for for Ella and Gooey saying live long and prosper. Get out of the show. Get out.